It's really a program of attraction, not promotion. He saw something in me. He saw the way I was living and said, you know what? It's pretty cool when the way you live your life, you can have an impact on someone else. Maybe with not even saying a word, just because they're watching you and they're listening.
It's The Journey with drug and alcohol attorney Mark G. Astor.
Welcome to The Journey with Mark Astor. I'm your host, Mark Astor. I've spent a lot of years sitting across the table from people during some of the most challenging moments of their lives as an attorney, an advocate, and as someone who understands that the road isn't always straight. What I've learned is that success, recovery, and growth rarely look the way we expect them to. There are detours, hard conversations, and moments that change everything. On this podcast, I talk with people who are willing to be honest about their journey, what worked, what didn't, and what they wish they knew sooner. This is very exciting for me. I'm joined by Chris Knuckles Nilan, and I hope you're okay with me using the nickname, but it's so appropriate for you, Chris. Chris is an American former professional ice hockey player and former radio host. He played 688 National Hockey League regular season games as a right wing for the Montreal Canadiens, New York Rangers, and Boston Bruins between 1980 and 1992. He won the Stanley Cup in 1986 with Montreal. Known as Knuckles or Nux, he was famous for his propensity to fight. He holds a record for the most penalty minutes by an American-born player. Today, Chris is open about his issues with alcohol and prescription drugs, as well as battling a heroin addiction. He's involved in numerous social and charitable causes. He also speaks to local students in Montreal about learning from his life experiences and mistakes. He's also the host of his podcast, the Raw Knuckles podcast. And I will tell you, while I read all of that stuff, and my wife and I had the opportunity to meet Chris, and I will tell you, he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And I was really flattered when he said he'd come on the podcast. So it's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, so I went to your website, and the funniest thing is the first photograph is one of you with your fist real up and close and personal to another guy. And I was like, that just sums up Chris perfectly.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, you were a tough guy, and I'm willing to bet you're still a pretty tough guy. Maybe we could step back. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Boston in a neighborhood called West Roxbury, predominantly Irish neighborhood, and in the late 60s and 70s. And yeah, hockey was a big thing back then. There was a rink built at the end of my street, and that rink was a safe haven for me. I absolutely loved it. I loved being up there. I loved skating. I loved playing hockey. But yeah, I grew up in a neighborhood that was one of the nicer neighborhoods in the city, but not void of any of the issues that you find in neighborhoods and cities.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have older sister Susan, older brother Stephen, and then a younger sister Kim.
And what about your parents? Are they still with us?
Mom and dad passed. Mom last year and dad back in 2021. My mother suffered from dementia for about 15 years, last 15 years of her life, 17 years maybe. Progressively got worse, had a stroke. And my dad never put her in a home. He took care of her, and eventually it wore him down, and it was difficult. But the one thing he never wanted to do was put her in a home.
Yeah, having lost my own dad about 9 years ago, that for me, the relationship between a son and his dad it's important, right? Because that's who we look up to. And my mom, bless her, is still around, and she's already made me promise never to put her in a home.
There you go.
I get it. From a sort of behavioral health perspective, was substance use, was that part of growing up in Boston when you were growing up?
Yeah, I was exposed to all that. We hung around the street corner, a bunch of us, and marijuana was a big thing back then coming in, and different drugs, mescaline, cocaine started to come in. I wasn't a guy that needed anything to get going for sure. I needed something to calm me down. But yeah, so yeah, all those drugs were prevalent. They were around. I didn't like marijuana. I drank with my friends quite a bit growing up, but I didn't like marijuana. It just made me paranoid, made me reclusive, and I didn't like the feeling.
Yeah, and I know that you're infamous, I guess that's the way to call it, for being, for lack of a better word, an enforcer. And if I use the wrong terminology, it's only because I've
Fine.
only really become a hockey fan because my stepson played hockey up at Suffolk. But from what I remember when I saw you speak a couple of years ago, the sort of enforcer mentality wasn't something that was limited to the NHL, right? You were a tough guy growing up in a tough environment. And I think that violence was maybe played a prominent role in growing up in the area that you did. Can you
Yeah, for sure. I so looked up to my dad, and I think my dad prepared me for navigating the streets and in life in general. And he was tough on me. I was a wild kid, and he was tough on me, my dad. And he disciplined me. He was a Green Beret. He also worked at a company in Cambridge affiliated with MIT called Draper Lab. They did a lot of government work and stuff like that. My dad stayed in the reserves for a long time, I think till he was like 50 or something. And he disciplined me quite a bit and was tough on me. And I needed that when I look back. I didn't like it at the time. I didn't like that discipline at the time, but yeah, I needed it, and it toughened me up in ways that I know prepared me for navigating those streets. And then eventually, my time in the NHL, it really helped me. But he's a guy. Look, even my hero is a guy I looked up to, and yeah, I fought quite a bit in the streets. I got in a lot of trouble. Had a lot of assault and batteries, dangerous weapon, all different things.
also having a dad in the military, was there any talk about you going in the military too?
There was talk in my own mind. He never pushed that on me. I always say it, my hockey career ruined my military career because I know I certainly needed discipline. And I felt as though if hockey wasn't there, that's probably the avenue I would have taken.
Yeah, one of the stories that just really stuck me when I saw you speak at that conference a couple of years ago was you told a story about how I think you'd gone out one night, there was a lot of alcohol involved, and the next morning you woke up and it looked like some guy's tooth was embedded in your hand.
Actually, I was sober when that happened.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell us about
a friend of mine got in a fight with a couple guys. I ended up hitting one of them. His tooth went in my hand. I went back home, cleaned it out, took the tooth out, and thought I'd be okay because I put peroxide on it. I ended up having a staph infection and ended up in the hospital for a couple weeks. Actually, I had 3 surgeries and I was on pain medication the whole time I was in there.
So, at what point did you say, okay, my career path is to play professional hockey? When did you make that decision?
No, listen, it was always a dream of mine when I was a young kid playing hockey. Bobby Orr came to town in Boston, and the Bruins were. I loved the way the Bruins played. They were tough. They were physical. They fought. They stuck up for each other. Those are all things that I identified with, no question. Sticking up for my friends, family members, whatever. And that is something that just was instilled in me. And I ended up playing hockey, like I said, and climbing that ladder. I was never the best player. I was just okay player growing up. I worked at it. When there was no ice, I'd be down the schoolyard shooting pucks. My father made me weighted pucks, and I used to shoot the weighted pucks and played street hockey all the time. I rollerblade. I did a ton of stuff to try and get better. I was a very average player.
Okay, so what's the old saying? Hard work beats talent when talent don't work hard. So you think maybe that was you, right? Maybe not the most talented guy, but nobody was going to outwork you.
Yeah, I worked my butt off. There's no question about it. I did. I think what helped me, I was willing to do some things that other guys just aren't willing to do. And that helped me to improve. It helped me to get better. It took me some time. I played high school hockey. I didn't play varsity high school hockey until I was a junior. I sat in the bench my freshman year the whole time. I made JV my second year. And then eventually Mr. O'Brien and Bill Hansen came. And Bill Hansen in high school was a turning point for me because he started to play me. I got an opportunity, which was nice.
Okay, and I found this online. I guess you played for Montreal, New York, and Boston. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Obviously, Boston was your hometown team, so I have to imagine that for you was like a dream come true to play for Boston. No?
Yeah, I always wanted to play for the Bruins growing up. That was my team. I went from high school to prep school for a year, and then I went I got a scholarship at Northeastern University. And the only reason I got the scholarship is because of Judge King. Judge King helped me get into prep school, wrote a recommendation for me, along with my coach, Bill Hansen from Catholic Memorial. And then I went to prep for that year, and the judge was friends with the hockey coach at Northeastern, Fernie Clement, and he offered me a full scholarship out of nowhere. I wasn't a scholarship candidate, but because of the judge had this faith in me, and he saw something in me, I guess, a lot of people didn't see in me, but the judge saw it. And I ended up with that scholarship to Northeastern to play. And then off I went and got drafted after my second year there by the Montreal Canadiens, which I was drafted in the last round. There's 234 players taken. I was 231 in the world that were taken that draft. My chances were like minute to make it to the NHL when you look at that draft position. But all I needed was an opportunity and a chance. How I got that chance, the draft, Judge King was friends with Dickie Moore and Doug Harvey, two Hall of Famers, Montreal Canadiens. Doug was a scout. Dickie was a big businessman here. And they were friends with the general manager at the time, Sam Pollock. And they went into Sam and said, listen, can you do us a favor and just draft this kid from Northeastern University, Boston kid, Chris Nilan. Just take him with your last pick, whatever, just draft him. And the judge got that done for me. They didn't come and find me. They came and watched me after those guys talked to Sam. And then next thing I know, I get drafted by the Canadiens. I didn't find out about that until the judge died. Dickie Moore told me the story. The judge never wanted me to know that he did that for me. God bless him. Like the hell of a man and a great influence on my life. But yeah, I always wanted to be a Bruin. And the unfortunate part, I'm so glad I got the opportunity. I really am. But I was near the end of my career the last couple of years. I was there a year and a half. My body was worn. I had a lot of wear and tear on my body, numerous injuries over the years. And I never got injured till like my 7th or 8th year. I was healthy as a horse, and things started to break down. And yeah, so I think things would have been different if I got there early on. And I don't know how they would have been different. I know one thing, having been part of the Canadiens organization and then climbing that ladder and getting the opportunity to come to Montreal. And once I established myself as a fighter, but I was in the minors for 49 games my first year. They sent me down, which was fine. I needed that. I needed that transition to pro hockey. But boy, American Hockey League was tough. There was a lot of fighting. It was crazy. And I was fighting almost every night. And when I got called up, the Canadiens needed that, but they also worked with me and day in and day out. And I was a willing participant, but I had great direction from the coaching staff to not only be a fighter, they wanted me to be a better player. And they helped me to do that.
You were almost fighting your whole life to get up there. How does one player decide, okay, I'm going to be the enforcer on the team? Because there seems like there's at least one or two enforcers on every team, right? There's that one guy who's just, he'll do whatever it takes. How did that role come to you?
Listen, I didn't come in thinking I'm going to be a fighter. When I got to the American League there, I remember the first game I played in Maine, I had a 5-game tryout for $200 a game. 4 games into the season, I think it was, we played our first game in Maine. And Maine was a farm team for Philadelphia Flyers, and they had really tough guys on that team. Now, I had a 5-game tryout contract, and I went into that game, and I ended up hitting a guy named Glenn Cochran. God rest his soul. Glenn passed away last year, a year and a half ago. And he was a big guy, like 6'4", 2, whatever. I don't know, he's huge. He had long arms. And I ended up hitting him. And listen, I was an aggressive kid. I also liked the way the Bruins played, and a lot of that rubbed off on me. That suited me well. So I hit him, turned around and slashed me. I slashed him back. We dropped the gloves. So I'm going to get my first fight. And we start going, and I end up hitting him, and I cut him open really bad. and I had the edge in the fight. I did really well. We both got kicked out of the game. And the next day, the coach called me in the room. I thought I was in trouble because I got kicked out of the game. And he said to me, "Hey, do you have an agent?" And I said, "No, I don't have an agent. No one wants to represent someone drafted that late, right? They're not going to make any money with them. They don't. I'm an afterthought." And he said, "We better find one because the Montreal Canadiens want to sign you to a contract." I had one fight, and I signed an NHL contract. Now, that being said, that traveled around the league like wildfire. That I had this fight with Cochran, and I beat him. And sure enough, every building I went into, or every team that came into our building, the tough guy wanted to try me. And I was fighting every night. I accepted that, and then I started to understand the role a little bit more, being there for my teammates when they were in trouble or they were getting taken advantage of. And it took off. But I played with a very good player, center iceman. His name was Rick Maha. Rick was a small guy. He was out of Boston University from Canada, and a great guy and a great NHLer. But he eventually played his career in St. Louis, did really well. But Rick was a great player, and I was there for him. I was riding shotgun for him. And I was a beneficiary of playing with him because, man, he gave me the puck in situation. I ended up in 49 games. I had 15 goals and 10 assists. So I had 25 points along with the 304 minutes in penalties. And the Canadians saw this. They're like, geez, he can not only fight, he can actually play the game a bit. He can score goals. And after that 49th game, I got called up, and I never went back to Halifax, Nova Scotia. I ended up staying in Montreal.
So I want to ask you this question because you talked about this guy. I think you said his name was Bobby Cochran, the guy you got in a fight with.
Blaine Cochran, yep.
Yeah, and you said God rest his soul. Is this, and I don't know how this works, but is there a mutual respect? You get into a fight with a guy, and once it's over?
Yeah, I didn't like guys back then. Guys I fought, we didn't talk to other guys. We didn't, hey, how you doing? No, none of that. But in retirement, certainly, that's all behind me. I don't hold any ill. The guy's just trying to make a living like I was and play the game that he loved. Some guys, that was their avenue to the NHL. Big guys, maybe not the best players, but they could fight and they could protect their teammates. And I think a lot of people don't like that part of the game, or didn't. A lot of people liked it back then, not so much today. Still think there's more people that like to see that in a game than there aren't. But certainly, it was an avenue for guys to make it to the NHL. And then it's crazy that looks a pretty honorable job being there to stick up for your teammates and help them, certainly when they're in need. And also, you'd fight for your teammates, there's no question. But there were times I had to fight for myself, too.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know today, especially with professional sports, and we've represented a number of professional athletes, especially with the NFL, there's a whole thing about CTE and all that. And it seems that maybe has creeped into the NHL too, because obviously if guys are getting in fights every single night or regularly, at some point you get a concussion, and that can obviously have effects. So do you think the fighting is as prominent today as it was back when you were playing?
Not close. Yeah. And the equipment's better. They wear visors now, and helmet protection is better. The CTE question, yeah, there's guys that are going to get it. In a lot of sports, soccer, football, real football, our football, and certainly hockey, those physical sports. And there's been a lot of talk about the hockey end fighters because a few guys have died over the years from CTE. They had CTE. Some died of drug overdoses, some suicide, that did that role. And I find that society wants to draw that straight line from being a hockey fighter to the death. And I think you know this too, that you just can't take a little portion of someone's life and say that's the reason they did what they did. You have to look at the totality of it. Their childhood growing up, was there trauma there somewhere growing up? Their teenage years, were there issues before they played in the NHL? Was stuff like that. Like, I've had quite a few concussions. I've never been knocked out except in a car accident. I went into the concussion program at Boston University. I've been in there for 3 years now. And they can't tell you if you have CTE, but they test you for everything. They draw spinal fluid from you, take brain scans, MRIs, and you're part of the study. What they try and identify is there's 32 different proteins in that spinal fluid that if you have certain ones, they can link that to CTE, dementia, Alzheimer's. So they can't tell me. But what they can tell me is where I am cognitively for someone my age. And it's not something I worry about, oh my God, I'm going to get CTE, this or that. No, I just go about my business. I read a lot. I stay active. I keep my mind active. And when I got the results after the first year, I was a little bit shocked. And they were shocked because they thought for someone with the amount of concussions I had and the role I played, that I would have struggled more with some of those neurological tests, some of the brain teaser tests they do, all that stuff. And I said, I'm probably no good for the study then when I talked to Dr. Alasko. And he said, no, you are, because why are you like this and other guys aren't? I spoke to him, and I remember waiting in the lobby to go up my first time, and I saw a former NFL player who was with his wife. Man, it was sad. It was sad to see. I could just tell if she wasn't with him, man, he wouldn't know where to go or what to do. The poor bastard. And I feel fortunate and blessed that I'm okay now. Who knows? I don't know. I don't sit around worrying about it. I go about my life.
Yeah, I'm glad you're okay. Talk about the Stanley Cup. What was that like to win the Stanley Cup?
Incredible. To be part of a group of guys that embark on a journey to try and win that thing is incredible. It's the toughest trophy in sports to win. Listen, there's no out of bounds in hockey, right? You can't run out of bounds. You can't hide. You're in that pen and you're going nowhere. And you have to show up and do your thing. But to win the Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens 40 years ago, coming up next month, it was incredible. I saw the Bruins do it as a kid. I went to the Stanley Cup parade in Boston, saw my hero Bobby Orr, and all of them, Esposito, Chivas, the whole. And one day, I wanted to see what that feeling was like, because I remember as a kid seeing how much fun they were having and not realizing the road to get there is so difficult. And it's just an incredible feeling to be part of a group of guys that achieved that together, fighting together, hitting together, scoring goals together, eating dinner together, having a few beers together, and doing everything together like a family, and then achieving that goal. You're bound together for the rest of your lives by that victory. I could not see a guy for 10 years and see him, and it's like you pick up where you left off. It's an incredible feeling.
Were you friends with any of the guys who played on the Miracle team?
Yeah, I know Mike. I played against Mike Eruzione, Jim Craig in college, Dave Silk, Jack O'Callahan. So yeah, I know those guys and played against them for sure. And yeah, pretty cool what they achieved.
What do you think was the moment where you realized, okay, I'm done playing professional hockey?
My last year when I was in Boston, and I remember that things were getting tougher on me physically and mentally, emotionally. And I remember my last few games in Boston, we played Chicago and we played Hartford back to back. And I fought a kid in Chicago who was like 19 years old. He was another big boy. I think Stu Grimson is 6'4" or something. He was big. And I did okay, but I took some punches. And I stayed on my feet and I went to the penalty box. And when you start questioning yourself as an athlete, it's not good. And I started to question myself. I'm saying, man, this is getting tougher. Do I still have it? Blah, blah, blah. I still had it here, but it was getting tough mentally. And it was draining me some. And I would sit in the penalty box and say, man, getting tougher. And then the next night, I fought another kid, Jim McKenzie, another big kid from Saskatchewan, awesome guy. You can see the podcast, by the way, on the Raw Knuckles, Jim McKenzie. You don't want to miss that one. It's funny what I said to him before the game. He was a fan of mine. He was staring at me walking in the building.
You talk about these guys with such reverence, and that you guys are punching each other in the face.
I was getting my sticks ready for the game, and they come walking in, and they had to walk by our locker room. I was out in the hall taping my stick, and where we worked on our sticks, and I happened to look up, and there's 5 guys from the other team walking in. And he's there. He's the biggest one. He's huge. He's like 6'5". It's a monster. And he's staring at me. I go, what the fuck are you looking at? And he didn't know what to say. He clammed up and he went in the room, and all the guys started giving him shit. Yeah, there's your hero. He give you shit. You just kept walking. He said, I was so embarrassed. And I said, I got to go out and fight this guy now. And certainly we did. And he hit me with some punches. But I stayed on my feet, and I went to the penalty box. I just knew it was getting tougher. And yeah, so I knew there, and I'm grateful that they put me on waivers, and Montreal picked me back up, and I came back here and finished the season out. And I wanted to play one more year, but it wasn't in the cards for me, and I ended up retiring.
We've represented a number of professional athletes and even collegiate athletes. And I think the one thing they tell me that they missed, there was a couple of things. One was obviously they missed the locker room with the guys. But the other thing that was hard was the structure that being an athlete provided, right? What to do, when to do it. It was almost like a military thing. You'll do this then, this, that. So what was life like for you after you got done playing?
Yeah, I was lost. You think you prepare, but yeah, you miss that camaraderie. You miss the locker room. That's probably the biggest thing. As far as be here this time. I mean, you're accountable. You're going to be there. And that's cool. Some people can live without that. Some struggle. They need that direction. They need that. I had some opportunities, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I worked in the insurance business. I hated it. I worked in community relations, and I was lost. When you do what I did for a living, and the passion and love I have for the game and the job I did, and that's taken away from you at the age of 34, it would have been nice to stay in the game if I could have, but not everybody gets that opportunity. And I moved back to Boston. I had a young family, and yeah, I was struggling. I got lost, and you never quite find, especially in those early years, anything that will replace what you did since you were a little kid playing hockey. You'll never find anything as gratifying and as enjoyable as that, as far as a job goes. So it was difficult.
Okay, let's switch gears for a second, because when I saw you speak, you were so just open and honest about the use of prescription drugs and alcohol. First of all, when did all that start, and when did it become a problem? Or at least in your eyes, it became a problem?
Drinking, my young life, growing up in the city with my friends and stuff, got in a lot of trouble with that. In those years, 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, that was a big part of the game. Like every day we would go to lunch. You didn't have to drink, but every day we went to lunch after practice, guys would have a couple beers and chill. After games, I found it a way to unwind for me, the use of alcohol. And I drank beer and vodka at times, but it helped me unwind. It helped me relax. There'd be nights I had lumps on my head. My hands are all cut up. It worked for me. It was a survival tool in a sense. It helped. And in retirement, I continued to drink, but the drugs didn't come in until I was retired. The one time I took prescription medication during my career, and I snapped my arm. I snapped my elbow. I went into the post head first, and I got my arm up, and I snapped my elbow bone in half. And it happened in Montreal. We had to fly to New York the next day. So they said, here's the deal. You won't be able to fly if we put a cast on it. So I said, I want to fly back to New York. I don't want to stay here. I didn't want to stay in Montreal. Too many memories. I would have been like, so they just wrapped me in an ACE wrap and gave me some painkillers, Percocet. And it it was enough to get me home. And I'll never forget when I got home in the cab, general manager was taking me to the hospital so I could get casted. And we were both in the cab from LaGuardia, and all of a sudden I felt sick, and I threw up all over the cab in the back. So the opiates right away, that was the first thing they did to me. And then in retirement, I remember as a kid, I had my knee surgery. I was in the hospital 2 weeks on Demerol. My hand on Demerol. I got my fingers bit, staph infection. I was on Demerol. So I took a lot of those drugs early in my life when I had different injuries I was in the hospital for, from fighting on the street to hockey stuff. And it agreed with me, but that time it didn't. And then in retirement, I've had, over the course of my life, close to 36 surgeries. I don't even include the dental stuff. And after every surgery, I was always getting painkillers. So they helped me, yeah, the short term. And eventually, Oxycontin came out, and I was taking that, and I was, okay, it's not addictive, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't know what was happening to me physiologically. I know one thing. When I had them, I felt okay. Everything was good. When I didn't, man, it feel like death. And the only thing that'll take that feeling away is more opiates. And I got caught in that whole whirlwind of addiction.
So how many years was that going on for?
Probably really 96 to 2000 when I went to treatment for the first time. 4 years.
Okay, so how many times did you go to treatment before you were able to really get a handle on this?
I went twice. I went once in 2000. I stayed half-assed sober for 3 years on self-will. I sponsored myself.
What does that mean, half-assed sober? Does that mean what they call California sober, just a little bit of you?
No, I didn't. I wasn't using drugs or drinking. Half-assed sober it's like being a dry drunk. You don't do the work. The life I wanted was on the other side of the work that I was avoiding. And it takes work on oneself to become a sober man. It's not just about not drinking. And that's what I thought. You don't drink, you don't do drugs, you're sober. No, it's more than that. You got to look at yourself and do a deep dive and, change, be honest with yourself and change some of those character defects. You got to be honest about them, what they are, and those shortcomings, and be willing to do the work to change those things. And it takes time. You don't change from someone who is willing to, at the drop of a hat, you see something wrong. You don't say something, you do something. That's what I was taught. They say, see something, say something. No, I was taught to see something, do something. And I didn't have a problem with that. If I saw something I felt was wrong in my value system, I'm going to do something about it. And, that can certainly hurt you. And it served me well in hockey. And my young life growing up, I say it served me well. No, I was in jail a lot. I ended up in court a lot for serious charges. And those things you have to address, and it takes time to change those. I had a lot of anger issues I had to be honest about. I would snap at the drop of a dime. And I had to in my job, right? On the ice. I was so used to that. Now I'm out. I'm no longer in the jungle. I'm out in a big open field with lots of nice animals and some not so nice animals. I was always ready to go, no matter what. And those things, I know I've done some less than admirable things in my life, but I wasn't taught to do those things by my parents. They instilled some good values in me, and I eventually compromised some of those values that ended up not only hurting me, but the people closest to me. And I had to look serious into myself and get honest with myself and change and make those changes. And I had to humble myself, and it's not always an easy thing to do. I had to ask for help, which is not an easy thing to do. I was always the guy, I'll help you. Want me to help you? I'll help you. And yeah, I had that pride of, I don't need anybody else. I can do this on my own. Just stiffen up my backbone, stick out my chest, and keep my chin up. And shit works that way. It worked for me a lot. And I'm not saying I've totally abandoned those things. I've tempered them quite a bit. And I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm just trying to live a good life and have some peace in my life and love the people that I care about most and not try and step on anybody's toes.
So when did you finally get sober, experience recovery?
I went to treatment again. Early '08 I went. I got in a bad car accident, ejected from the vehicle unconscious on the way to Montreal. That shook me. I called the guy who helped me from the NHL. I ended up calling him, and he answered the phone. And I didn't think anybody knew I was back out doing my thing, drinking and doing drugs again. And I called him, and Dan answered the phone. He goes, "Who's this?" I said, "It's Chris Nilan." He said, "Oh, I've been waiting for your phone call." So I'm like, okay, the cat's out of the bag. And I was on a plane the next day to treatment. And I went again for 3 months, stayed sober for about 8 months, and ended up back on Oxycontin. And then when Oxycontin was getting scarce by then, around 2009, early 2010, they changed the laws and made it more difficult, and they were cracking down. And I couldn't get the pills anymore. I ended up using heroin to take away that terrible withdrawal symptoms. It worked just like the opiates. And yeah, I got spun up in that. I had a terrible time. And then I got sober. And I started doing the work. And then I moved back here to Montreal. And I got a job in radio, and life was good. My wife, Jamie, we weren't married at the time, but she moved here with me from Hawaii. And life was going good again. And I stopped doing the things that you're supposed to do in recovery, or the things that are suggested to do that keep you sober on a daily basis. And I got busy with my radio show. I was running around doing this and that. And my mom had a stroke in 2015. And I rushed home, went to the hospital. I was there, and I ended up, instead of calling my sponsor, I called the drug dealer and got a little bag of stuff so I could snort it and take the pain away. I don't remember what happened, but this I remember. After I got that bag, I was going to go to my car, but it was freezing out. I think I'll go to the car and do it. I'll just snort a little line, and it'll take care of me. And I said, you know what? No, I'll go upstairs. I'll go in the bathroom. There's a warm bathroom up there. I'll just go up there. If I ever went to my car, I'd be dead now. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. My niece was there. My niece saw me and ran and got the doctor, and they put me on a stretcher, gurney, whatever, and rushed me down the emergency room. The next thing I remember, the nurse was slapping me in the face saying, "Chris, what did you take? What did you take?" I was gone, and they hit me with a Narcan, and I was so ashamed of myself. The shame was unbearable. My girlfriend Jamie at the time was like devastated, but she stuck by me, stuck with me, helped me through it. I called my sponsor the next morning. He came and picked me up. I called him a day late and almost $1 short, and took me to a meeting, and I got going again. And then I said, okay, Chris, why is this happening? And I made the changes. I still had some of those anger issues. My wife put it on me, my girlfriend. You got to address that. I was lagging behind in that. I didn't want to address it. I was fine with it. And then when I really got honest with myself, it was affecting the people around me that I love the most. And I did do something about it. And I've addressed that. That was 10 years ago, December 7th, 2015. And I've been sober 10 years. And life is good today. I went through the toughest time in my life, and I stayed sober through it. And I didn't do that alone. I had help, certainly. But back in COVID, I had my radio show, and I got fired from that show because I wouldn't get vaccinated. I refused to get vaccinated. They fired me. And here I am, a guy in my 60s. What am I going to do now? How am I going to make this work? No salary coming in. And I stayed sober. I lost my dog, Bodie, who was like near and dear to my heart because he really helped me with my anger stuff. Golden Retriever. He was like there. And
so we've got two of those thick dogs.
Oh, it's unbelievable. He wasn't even a service dog, but he was a service dog. And then I lost my dad. Then a couple months later, I lost one of my best friends from Boston, Larry Jackson. He died from an aortic dissection. And then I was struggling with dealing with my daughter, who also suffers from addiction. And it was overwhelming. This was all in the span of 5 months. And I paid attention what I had to. I didn't, even though emotionally I was having a tough time and mentally, I had support around me. And yeah, I stayed sober through the most difficult time in my life, bar none.
So what do you do these days to stay sober?
I have an in-person meeting I do here in Montreal. And then I do a meeting Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night on Zoom. I do 5 meetings. On the weekends, I save for my family and my dog. And yeah, I talk to sober people every day, sober guys. I have a little routine here I do, and just living a better life all around, helping other people. I'm part of Barry F. Lorenzetti Mental Health Foundation here in Montreal. I do a lot of work with them. I did a one-man show last May, end of May and June in Montreal here. I was on stage for 2 hours a night, 300 people a night, where I told my life story. It was really nerve-wracking, nervous like you wouldn't believe. I did that for the foundation to raise money. They had a lot of corporate support and money for the foundation that came in because of those shows. And then I did one later at a theater here in Montreal that was really good, went well. And yeah, so doing that, I don't do the podcast anymore. I stepped away from it. I enjoyed doing it, but it was difficult from the standpoint financially, I wasn't doing as well as I thought I'd do because I don't take money from any alcohol companies or gambling companies. There was good money in gambling. Here I am, a sober guy. I'm going to reach out to all these young kids so they can start their gambling careers and then lose all sorts of money and start out life in such a hole. Yeah, the juice was not worth the squeeze anymore. And I have fun doing it. I love doing it. I love talking with people and having those conversations. But yeah, it just wasn't worth it anymore. So I've been busy with the foundation. I'm an ambassador with the Montreal Canadiens today, which is quite an honor for me. First American guy, first English guy to be an ambassador, which is pretty cool. And I'm grateful to the organization for that. I'm grateful to this organization for a lot that's happened in my life.
Yeah. You still go to games?
Oh, yeah. I don't go all the time. I go when I'm representing the team and they ask me to come in. But I'll do maybe 12 of those a year where I go in and meet with people and luxury suites and those boxes and meet with people and shoot the breeze, watch a game. Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it. I also represent another company here, BGL, here in Montreal. A friend of mine, Jim Barria, who I knew back when I played And Jim's 85 now, but he hired me as an ambassador for his company, which is a custom brokerage company, international company that he's done well. He's been just a super friend to me, and was there for me. One of those guys that was there for me when I was just trying to get back on my feet. Yeah, and I'm so grateful that I have people like that in my life. My dentist, Zane Turner. I have no teeth in my head if it wasn't for him. He gave me a place to live when I moved back here. I moved back here, I had $500 in my pocket, a borrowed vehicle, and a hockey bag full of clothes. He let me live in his condominium downtown till I chipped away and got back on my feet little by little. And yeah, so I get it. Like when you suffer from addiction, you go alcoholism and you're trying to change your life. Doesn't matter who you are. There's not a lot of people willing to say, hey, come on, we'll give you a hand up here. They just aren't. And I get that. You have a reputation of being unreliable. Your life is unmanageable. A lot of people don't want to hire someone like that. And I had people there that were willing to take that risk. That Mitch Melnick, the guy who helped me get the radio job, and Wayne Buse here in Montreal, two guys that I had known Mitch since I played here. And he always said, oh, you'd be good in the radio, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But he was there for me. He went to bat for me to help me get that radio job so I could get back on my feet. I could start chipping away. And I know who those people are. My friend Brian McLaughlin in Boston, guy who was there for me in a big way. So my agent, Dan Ray, like so many, you got to be willing to help yourself. People are going to help you. You got to be willing to help yourself.
So if folks want to get in touch with you, maybe they want to hire you to, I don't know, promote a product or just publicly speak, how do they find you?
My website, knucklesnilan.com, info@knucklesnilan.com. Attention, Jamie, my wife, Jaime. We get a lot of requests through my website, some for some opportunities to endorse different companies, and also some because people are struggling with drugs or alcohol. And I've made quite a few connections through that website and helped quite a few people, which is just an awesome feeling. And I learned this in here. I can't keep what I have unless I give it away. To be able to help another human being who is struggling with what I was struggling with, it's easy for me to do that. It's easy for me to try and steer someone, make suggestions to someone. Do you want to change your life? Do you want to get your life back? Is that, or do you want to keep going down this road that ends in jail, in an institution, or you end up dead? Those are the options. And it's been extremely gratifying when I see someone I've directed to this life and they're doing well 1, 2 years later. I had a kid I met with, he reached out to me and I met with him and had coffee with him, and I'm there, man, this is one guy I don't think is ever going to get it. He's in all my meetings now and he's doing awesome. And it's great to see the growth and hear the growth from what he was that first time I sat down with him and had coffee to now. Like now he gets it and he makes sense and he's helping other people, which is even crazier. So there's been quite a few of those. I have a friend that I golf with, and he's 9 months, he hasn't drank. Now, he was a big drinker and a good friend. And he doesn't do meetings, doesn't do any of that, and that's fine. As long as he's not drinking. There's more than one way to skin a cat. He always tells me, I remember he said, Chris, this time we golf and I sit with you and the other guys and you don't drink, you drink. Well, how do you do that? I said, there's ways you can do it. If you don't really want to drink and you want to live a sober life, you get to a point where you don't have to do that anymore. About a month later, he said, you know what? He was away somewhere and he come back. He said, you know what? I haven't drank in a month. I'm there, that's cool, good for you. I wasn't trying to push him. I was just there. And a while later, he said, it's been a month and a half. I said, that's awesome. He said, what should I do? What do you mean, what should you do? He said, should I keep going? I said, yeah, you feel good? Yeah, I have no headaches in the morning. So now he's 9 months. And it's just funny that, you know, what we do to stay sober, it's really a program of attraction, not promotion. And that is the perfect example of the attractive part. He saw something in me. He saw the way I was living and said, you know what? And that's one guy. And there's been quite a few guys I played against that I'm around that have done that and shocked me. So it's pretty cool when the way you live your life, you can have an impact on someone else. Maybe with not even saying a word, just because they're watching you and they're listening. I just think it's awesome to have that impact on someone because I know all too well where you end up. And it is not pretty. It is misery. It's hell on earth. And you know what? It's not like that today at all.
I love what you're doing. My wife and I heard you speak a couple of years ago. In fact, she wasn't my wife at the time, but we all experienced some personal growth, right? I got married
Yeah.
for the second time. I'm 59 now.
Yeah.
So I was so flattered that you would agree to come on this. And I met you 2 years ago, and I just thought you were a gentleman. And I know our mutual friend, he just raves about you. Now I understand why he's such a fan and has such admiration for you. So thank you for coming on and sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, not a problem, Mark.
I appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
And for the folks that are listening in or going to be watching this, if you want information about the work that we do, please go to the website, mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. And if for some reason you can't find it, just Google me. I think there's about 924 videos online on YouTube. Just Google Mark Astor, you'll find us. And thank you again, Chris, for being with us. Until next time, thank you for tuning in.